For 10.1, I'm just putting example 1 in here for you. We've already gone over it. You should have this in your notes, but if you have any questions or if we didn't write all of the details down, feel free to read this and look at some of the hints that it tells you about like where to put things and read through the steps again. But don't feel like you have to copy this particular section down because you should already have this in your notes if you were here. For example 2, we're just going to be interpreting stem and leaf plots, so you can see they already have one made for us here, and it tells us that the stem and leaf plot shows student test scores, and they want us to do 3 things. They want us to figure out how many students scored less than 80 points just by looking at this stem and leaf plot. They want us to know how many students scored at least 90 points, and then they want us to talk about how the data are distributed. So let's start with letter A. In order to figure out how many students scored less than 80 points, we have to look at our key and just realize that if they say the 9 is to the left of the vertical line and the 2 is to the right, and that equals 92 points, then we can look on here and say, okay, then that must mean like the 9 and the 2 would be 92, so this would be 90, this would be 81, this would be 70, this would be 66. We didn't come across one like this yet, but if you have 10 to the left and a 0 to the right, that's like 10 hundreds, which in this case, or excuse me, would be 10 tens, and that would be like 100 in this case. So 10 tens and 0 ones would be 100. So somebody scored 100 points on this particular test. So if we want to know how many students scored less than 80, then we start to look in this range and we know that anything in this column would not be less than 80 because the lowest you could get from here would be 80. So we can start looking up here and we would realize that 78, 77, 75, 70, and then 66 are all less than 80. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can really just get away with counting the leaves on that one because these are already kind of rolled in. So 5 students scored less than 80 for letter A. Letter B asks how many students scored at least 90 points. So then again, you've got to come over here and start looking at where the minimum of 90 is. So nothing in the 80s row would meet that requirement, so it's got to be 90. So again, you can just start counting the leaves here. 90, 92, 99, and 100 are all above 90, so that would mean that there were 4 students that scored above or at least 90 points. So we would write our answer as the idea that 90, 92, 99, and 100 are all at least 90 points, so 4 students scored at least 90 points. Letter C asks us how are the data distributed. So we're going to look at the overall stem and leaf plot, and remember that's how we said stem and leaf plots are useful to kind of figure out how the data is distributed. And what we can see here is there aren't very many scores that are less than 70, or excuse me, less than 80. So we have very few low scores on this particular test. And then we also don't have very many high scores. We only have a few in the 90s to 100 range. And you can see by the stem and leaf plot that most of our data or our test scores are in the middle. So when you answer the question about how the data are distributed, you can simply just look at that stem and leaf plot, and again, since there were only a few low test scores and only a few high test scores, what we can say is most of the scores are in the middle. For example 3, they want you to make some conclusions from a stem and leaf plot, so kind of like interpreting it. And they give us 4 statements here, and they want us to know, or they want us to find out which one is not true with this stem and leaf plot. And this time we're talking about plant heights. So literally stems and leaves here, which is kind of fun. Our key down here says that the 1 to the left and the 5 to the right of the line is equal to 15 inches. So we would interpret this as being 1 inch, 2 inch, 4 inches, and then 10 inches, 22 inches, 36, and so on. So first of all, it says most of the plants are less than 20 inches tall. So if we look at 20, there's no specific 20, but it would be in this column. We can look and say most of those plants are less than 20 inches tall. You could even count the leaves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 plants are less than 20 inches, and then only 3 of them are more than 20 inches. So we're going to say that that one is true. So that's not the one that's not true. Then it asks us about the median plant height and says that it's 11 inches. So again, this is already ordered least to greatest, which is helpful. So we just need to know how many data values there are. And again, we kind of just counted them here, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 different data values. And since the median is the direct one in the middle, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on this side. Keep this one in mind right here. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to the right of that. So the median of the plant height looks like it's actually about 10 inches. So we're going to write 10 inches here as a reminder, but we're still going to check these other ones just to make sure. The range of the plant height is 35 inches. So remember, to find range, we have to subtract the smallest value in the set from the largest. So the largest here is 36, and the smallest is 1. So for finding range, it would be 36 minus 1, and that's equal to 35 inches. So that's true. And then the final one says the plant height that occurs the most often, which would be kind of like the mode, is 11 inches. And we can see here that we've got an 11 and another 11. So there are 2 plants that are 11 inches. And if you look at the rest of the list, there are only 1 value in each of those rows. Then there is only 110, 115, 117, 122, 125, and 136 value. So that's also true, that the one that shows up the most is 11. So that tells us that the only one of those statements that is not true is letter B, because the median plant height is actually 10 inches, not 11.